Cinnamon was introduced to Europe by the Romans many moons ago after a trip to Sri Lanka. One country a few decades later started to introduce it to the baked goods for our greatest pleasure, Sweden. And that's how was born the cinnamon roll, a dessert, a baked good that's appreciated by many all over the world. So today, guess what? That's what we're making. Some delicious cinnamon rolls with a beautiful bourbon and pecan caramel on top. So let's go. First thing first, let's make the dough.
Alright, so before we start, I just want to make sure that you know that you can make this recipe by hand. I am using a stand mixer, but absolutely you can do it by hand. Anyway, let's place some milk into a saucepan and we're going to put it on the heat on medium-high until it comes to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. You are then going to pour it in the bowl and we're going to add the yeast. This is going to develop. You want it to have it for about 10 minutes to rest. We're going to give it a tiny whisk. You could also add a bit of the sugar that you have to help develop, but not necessary. In the stand mixer, we're going to add all of our flour, all of our sugar, a pinch of salt, so pretty much all the dry ingredients. And we're going to give that a bit of a mix. Just really all you want to do is to make sure it's all combined together before we add the wet elements. We're then going to add our mixture of milk and yeast when it's fully developed. And we're gonna let it go for about a minute or until combine per se. Then we're going to add our egg. We're gonna let that go as well for another 30 seconds or until fully incorporated. And then we're gonna start increasing the speed and we're gonna mix it for about 8 minutes or until the dough is nice and smooth. It's going to be super elastic, so don't worry too much. Just place it in your bunch and we're gonna start kneading it. But you know what? Let's make some room. And I'm saying, yep, let's do that magic trick. Okay, so back to reality. We are going to knead it for about a minute or two. Basically, what you want to do is to kind of like smooth it and kind of like tighten it by rolling it over itself. And when that is done, we need to place it on the bowl, which I had lightly greased. So we're going to lift that up with a scraper, place that into the bowl, and we're going to wrap it with plastic or a towel. Next thing you want to do is to put it in a warm place. I like to do it on top of my oven, and we're gonna let it proof until it doubles in size, around 90 minutes. And while you're waiting, you can go to IKEA to do a bit of shopping because it's Swedish. You get the joke? It's not funny. I'm sorry. Anyway.
Alright, it's been 90 minutes. Our dough is beautifully risen. We are now going to, as well as degaze it, we're gonna roll it down and I'm gonna start stuffing it.
So when I say we're going to degaze it, I'm talking about the dough, obviously. Otherwise, we're going to punch it. I mean, you've seen that before. We start to get to know me by now. We're going to use a scraper, take it out of the bowl, and place it on the bench that I've lightly floured. You don't want it to be sticky everywhere. It's not going to be easy to roll, so trust me, you need the flour. You're going to add a bit more flour on top of the dough as well. And with a rolling pin, you're going to pretty much roll it until it's about, I would say, half an inch thick. And don't forget to rotate the dough so you end up with a nice rectangle, and if it shrinks a little bit because it's still elastic, just let it rest for about 15 to 20 minutes. Then you're gonna take your butter, and I'm using high quality butter because I care about my pastry. So we're going to spread that all over the dough. You wanna make sure it's also spread thin because when it's cooking, you don't want it to leak out.
Alright, let's make the sugar.
Well, if you insist, let's do it. So in a medium-sized bowl, you're going to mix your cinnamon nutmeg mix, it's pretty much half and half, and your sugar. We're gonna use a tiny whisk and make sure it's fully combined, and we're gonna place that all over our dough. I'm actually using a sieve, you don't have to, but I kind of like to control how much I'm putting, and also the impurities are going to stay in the sieve and they're not gonna be in your dough, and to me, that's a win. We can now start rolling. Sorry, I'm a bad singer. Anyway, we're going to roll it over itself. So you don't want it to be too tight, but also not too loose. I personally like it when it's not too dense. So while you see it, I pretty much just roll it over itself. Make sure it's nicely packed, and we're gonna start cutting it. So we're gonna prepare a 14 by 9 inches dish, which I'm going to line up with some parchment paper. Then with the dough, I'm going to cut it into 12 equal pieces. So quick math, I'm gonna cut it in half. that half cut in 3, and each of these 3 cut in 3 again. And that is my math, ladies and gentlemen, and I think that's proper. Also, I don't know if you've noticed, but my dog just crashed the set. I don't know if you just saw him passing by, but there was no way for me to reshoot that scene, so I just went with it. We can say hi to him later. Alright, back to our cinnamon rolls. Once we are done cutting those beautiful little puppies, haha, see that joke? We're going to make sure it's nice and tight, and we're gonna place them into the dish, 3 per row, but don't stress too much. Let's say you have more, you can pack them, it's not the end of the world. And yes, we're gonna place them all, and we're gonna cover them with plastic because we want to make sure they proof for about 20 to 30 minutes or until they're pretty much double in size. If you don't have plastic or you don't want to use plastic, you can also cover them with a warm towel. That works just fine.
While the buns are proofing, I'm going to work on a bourbon and pecan caramel. Shall we?
Yes, we shall. So in a medium saucepan, I'm going to place my brown sugar and my, again, high quality butter. We're going to place that on medium high heat until it's completely melted. Once melted, we are going to add a bourbon. It's going to start kind of like deglazing per se the sugar. It's going to loosen a little bit. We're going to give that a bit of a tiny whisk, and it's going to start bubbling, and we're going to cook that for about a minute. Once the minute is gone, we're going to add our pecans. So you could chop them. I kind of like them whole like this. Also, please note that they've been roasted. You're just going to give them a bit more of a crunch. We're going to stir that in, let those pecans cook in the sugar for about another minute, and we're going to let that rest to the side. Alright, let's check on our cinnamon roll, shall we?
Alright, they look so beautiful. Let's bake them for 25 to 30 minutes at 375 degrees Fahrenheit.
30 minutes later. Looks like now is the time to take them out of the oven.
I'm just going to add my caramel on top. Wow, look at that. I'm gonna let it rest for about 5 minutes.
Those 5 minutes were excruciating, but now it's time to plate and sample.
Well, come on. Check this out. It looks absolutely amazing. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. A quick reminder, recipe is always in the description, so you can check this out here. And if you allow me, come on. See you next episode.